Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraya Ashtaprayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatam Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki Yam Pravrajantamapedamapeda Prityam Dvaipayana Nirakapatarajuhamu Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Binedu Tam Sarvabhuta Hridayam Yamma Goswami. So we're reading today Srimad Bhagavatam 4, chapter 28. Brahmana becomes a woman in the next slide, text 25. Vriksyamanaha prasabham yavanena valiyasa na avinda tamasa avishtaha Sakhayam Sukridam Puraha Vriksyamana Prasabham Vriksyamana Prasabham Yavanena Valiyasa Yavanena Valiyasa Nalindat Tamasavishta Nalindat Tamasavishta Sakhayam Suhridam Puraha Sakhayam Suhridam Puraha Vriksyamana Prasabham Yavanena Valiyasa Tamasavishta Sakhayam Suhridam Puraha being dragged. Prasabham, forcibly. Yavanena, by the Yavana. Baliyasa, who was very powerful. Na Alinda, could not remember. Tamasa, by darkness of ignorance. Adishtaha, being covered. Sakkayam, his friend. Sukhridam, always a well-wisher. Puraha, from the very beginning. Translation. When King Puranjana was being dragged with great force by the powerful Yavana out of his gross ignorance, he still could not remember his friend and well-wisher, the super soul. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Bhaktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutam yattvamam shanti prichati. A person can be in full Krishna consciousness and become happy and satisfied if he knows but three things, namely that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the enjoyer of all benefits, that he is the proprietor of everything, that he is the supreme friend of all living entities. If one does not know this and functions instead under the bodily conception of life, he is always harassed by the tribulations offered by material nature. In actuality, the Supreme Lord is sitting by the side of everyone. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Printishe Arjuna Tishtati. The living entity and the super soul are sitting side by side in the same tree, but despite being harassed by the laws of material nature, the foolish living entity doesn't turn toward the Supreme Personality of God for protection. However, he thinks that he is able to protect himself from the stringent laws of material nature. This, however, is not possible. The living entity must turn toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender unto Him. Only then will he be saved from the onslaught of the powerful Yamana or Yamaraja. The word Sakkayam, friend, is very significant in this verse because God is eternally present besides the living entity. The Supreme Lord is also described as Sukhridam, ever well-wisher. The Supreme Lord is always a well-wisher, just like a father or mother. Despite all the offenses of a son, the father and mother are always the son's well-wisher. Similarly, despite all our offenses and defiance to the desires of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord will give us immediate relief from all hardships offered by material nature if we simply surrender unto Him, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, due to our bad association and great attachment for sense gratification, we do not remember our best friend, the Supreme Personality of God. Srila Prabhupada. Vrikṣyāmana prasabham yamanena valiyasam navindat tamasa vishta sakkamam vidam. Translation again. When King Puranjana was being dragged with great force by the powerful Yamana out of his gross ignorance, he still could not remember his friend and well-wisher, the super soul. Vijnana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhaya Srimate Bhakti Swami Name. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharya Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Sutari Manchakalpatarvishya Kripasindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Vedanta Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ajanam Pujana Kavada Sankirtana Kavidana Kavita Srisham Javarudan Pai Vande Jagat Priyakaram Karnamataram Dharma Vishnamava Chinamava Sukun Sanjeevaya Tekila Shakti Darak Anyamscha Stacharana Shramana Dvaga Prananam Purusha. So, Hare Krishna. We are reading the allegorical story of King Purana, who represents the living entity. And here in this particular chapter, the next life of King Purana is being described. And the idea here in this particular verse which we are reading is very simple. Because King Purana didn't remember about his well-wisher and his friend, who is always with him, God, who is within his heart, because of the ignorance, gross ignorance, because his mind was covered by this tamasa, the darkness. Therefore, the memory of the Supreme Lord didn't come in his last moment. Here, basically, the very last moment of our existence in the body is being described when we are, the spirit soul which is within the body is forcibly being dragged out of the body by Yamadutas. And because of gross ignorance, somehow or other, we don't remember about the Lord. Even people who believe in God. King Kulashekar says that Krishna at the moment of death, it's very difficult to remember God because you are much more occupied with the processes which are going on in the body. Your mind is disturbed. In our sane condition, when the mind is not disturbed, it's difficult to remember about God. So what to speak about the condition when everything is disturbed? Your mind is disturbed, your body is disturbed, you cannot concentrate. Sometimes people, they have this foolish idea that, closer to death I can somehow or other remember God. Forget it. Oh, you have already forgotten. we cannot remember the Lord, and therefore Krishna himself says, Yam Yam Vavismaram Bhavam Tyajat Tekarivaram. And he says that, this Sadarat Bhava Bhavitaha, you have to cultivate this bhava about remembering the Lord during the lifetime. You should not really postpone this remembrance of the Lord till the very last moment. Sometimes people very foolishly understand this idea which is described in Bhagavad Gita that, just remember about God at the moment of death and that's it. You're done. But Krishna himself says, Sadata Bhava Bhavitaha, this bhava of remembering the Lord, on our dependence on the Lord, has to be cultivated throughout the life. If we are not cultivating this dependence on the Lord, there is absolutely no chances that we will remember about the Lord and this most dangerous and most tragic and drastic event in the present world, when they're being dragged. The human psychology is very strong. And the human psychology is that we're used to rely upon ourselves. And especially when people are young, yeah, I will make it. They're young and strong, and the desires are very strong, and people think, yeah, I got it together. I know what to do. But because of this very important conditioning of ours, that we are basically always rely upon ourselves and not surrender to God, because who knows whether He will save us or not. We better do something ourselves. We don't remember God in the course of our life. Just try to reproduce what you think about when you are changing job. Changing job is supposed to be just a couple of hours where we have to remember about the Lord. But what do we remember during these 2 hours? What I will do? What I did before and what I'm going to do next. All our plans are there. They're just, I will become happy. You will know. Because this is ignorance. And nobody can become happy in a state of ignorance, tamasa. The fear will always be there. Like when it is dark outside, we have the fear. So in the same way, when it is dark inside, when our mind or our heart is covered by this darkness, and we don't remember about the Lord, the fear is there, the fear takes over. Here it is explained that at this moment of death, one becomes so disturbed because of the fear. We have to leave everything behind us. There is a little joke that during funeral ceremony, 2 friends were talking with each other. The third friend is lying dead. One friend is asking, what did he leave behind? He said, he left behind everything. He didn't take anything with him. He left everything. So basically, and this is a very fearful condition. All of a sudden, in this moment of death, we have to leave everything with, all our friends and relatives and all our possessions and everything in which we were trying to take shelter. The point is that during the lifetime, we are trying to get protection from the material things, from our relatives, from our abilities, from our mind, from our possessions. We're always trying to gain some kind of security, not understanding that there is only one secure position in this material world, that is remembrance of the Lord. If we remember about the Lord, then we are secure, otherwise we are insecure, and this insecurity ultimately will create fear. And that's darkness of tamas, of ignorance, which is there in everyone's heart. And therefore, basically, there is no chance for us to remember about the Lord. And we always live with the hope that I will become somehow rather happy. We look around and nobody is happy. Or sometimes we think somebody is happy. Usually it's people in the advertisements. The only people who are happy is the people who advertise some stupid thing. They just make a good show of being happy. Nobody else is happy. Your relatives are not happy, your mother is not happy, your friends are not happy, nobody is happy. But I will be a glorious exception of this rule. For sure, there's no doubt about it. So people are living in this illusion, again, created by darkness, and ultimately they are preparing the ultimate defeat. What is death but an ultimate defeat of the living entity? The whole life we are trying to do something to make it only to die. That's it. Nothing else will happen with us. Nothing special will happen with us. We always live with the hope that I'm very special and something really special will happen to me. Yes, there is one very special thing which will happen to you. You will die. I remember in the beginning of 90s, when Russia just opened up and there was a lot of, free ideas floating around, and people, they all of a sudden became very thoughtful and free. So one of the governmental officials came to Hare Krishna temple, and he wanted to give us advice, what you should do to spread Krishna consciousness. And he said that basically, if you want to gain followers, you have to start predicting some future. And if it will work, so many followers will come to you. And I said, no problem, I can predict the future. He said, really? You can predict the future? I said, yes, definitely. You want to know your future? He said, yes, definitely, I want to know my future. I said, you will die. This is my prediction. He was not very happy with my prediction. That's the only thing we can predict, this 100% surety that, we will die. It is said by Rishabhadev in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that ultimately everyone will be defeated. Until this aboda, this ignorance is there. This ignorance creates parabhala, which is defeat. When ignorance of tamas and is within our heart, within our mind, then for sure we will be defeated. And the only means of victory is to gain knowledge. And this knowledge is being described, so Prabhupada very beautifully describes this in the purport. And he says that, and basically the whole series of these verses is about the disturbed condition of the living entity at the moment of death. And Srila Prabhupada, he started this purport by quoting Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktaram Yagata Pasam Sarvalokam Maheshwara, Subhridam Sarvabhutanam Yatpamam Santir Vishhati. He says that the only cure, the only medicine from the fear which is following us in this material world at every step practically, is to remember who is the one. And not only remember, but realize this fact that he is Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam, he is the Bhakta, enjoyer. Or Bhakta may also mean maintainer. Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam, he is enjoying everything. And then he says, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, he is the Mahaishvara, the big controller of all the worlds, of all the planets, and Subhridam Sarvabhutanam. When you know this, for sure, when this knowledge becomes realized within your heart and you know perfectly well that you will, that God is there and He is Subhridam, He is your Subhrid, He is your well-wisher, then only you can reach the peaceful state of mind. Otherwise, we will always be disturbed. This disturbance is there because we always somehow rather don't like what happens with me in this life. Not accepting the Lord as our well-wisher due to ignorance, we're always disturbed because always something happening with us which is against our will. Once one saintly person was asked, can you please prove that there is a supreme will which rules this world? He says, oh, it's very simple, I can prove it to you. Throughout my life, nothing happened how I wanted. That means that the supreme will rules. That's the real proof. But because we don't want to accept this fact, we are disturbed. Something is wrong happening with us all the time. Who can testify that something is wrong happening with us all the time? Something like 30%. Everyone else got their show together, right? Always there is some source of stress. When something is going not right, not according to my will, I become distressed. And this distress is there. It deprives me of peacefulness. But if I know that the well-wisher, the best friend, is always there, and whatever he sends to me is the best thing which can happen with me, even if, according to my limited capacity of understanding, it's the worst thing which may happen with me, I will remain calm and composed and peaceful. But because we are driven by this desire to enjoy ourselves independently, this desire to enjoy ourselves independently, this irrational unwillingness to surrender to the Lord, always makes us disturbed, always disturbed, always fearful. People, they don't know how to achieve real peace. And it's interesting, I was thinking about this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktaram Yagyata Pasam Sarvalokam Maheshwaram Sukhridam Sarvabhutanam. Basically, Krishna says, I am this. I am the supreme enjoyer of everything which is happening in this world. I am the supreme controller of everything, of all the planets and of all the people. Because you can also translate Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Loka as people, not just planets. And Sukhridam Sarvabhutanam. I am this. I am the best friend of all the living entities. But because we have this desire to be independent on God, we always try to prove that I am the supreme enjoyer, the supreme controller, and the supreme friend. I am the Sukhrit of everyone. And because of this misconception, we cannot reach peace. What happens with us, we try to enjoy, and ultimately we become frustrated out of our attempts to enjoy this world. We try to, it is actually 3 schools of Austrian psychology. The psychology started rather recently in the 19th century. So Freud, he came and he said, Sigmund Freud, one devotee, he pronounces his name not Sigmund Freud, he says sick mind Freud. Because he says that what is the meaning of life? Just to enjoy sex. And the first Adi psychologist in this world, Sigmund Freud, he says that you can explain anything about a human being because of this drive to enjoy. And Krishna also starts with this. He says, by the way, I am the supreme enjoyer. And that's the first motivation which is there. Freud is right. We do have this motivation to enjoy this material world. But we're trying to do it independently, and that's wrong. That's the best scenario for frustration. And then he says, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, I'm the controller. And the next one, the disciple of Freud, came, Adler, and he said that the main drive within the human being is desire to control. It's desire to lord it over. And basically, second psychologist says, yes, this is the strongest drive. And then the third psychologist came and he said, no, the real drive within the human being is to do something for others. To find the meaning of life in doing something for others. Sufridam Sarvabhuma. This is 3 ways of our stupid, completely ridiculous attempts to imitate God in this world. And because we are never God, we will never achieve peace through these imitation techniques. We will always be frustrated. Always. So many generations of people were frustrated by trying to enjoy, trying to control, and trying to do something good for others. Sometimes, especially devotees, they're sometimes a little sensitive when Prabhupada some sattvic people, they really sometimes think that we're very fanatical people. Because sometimes we say something strong about the mundane charity work. Says that this is all useless. Ultimately, it's not useless, it's harmful. Because by doing the charity, we are trying again to imitate God. I am the best friend of all living entities. Look how kind I am. Look how charitable. Look how good I am. The Lord says, my dear friend, I will make sure that you will be frustrated about this. What happens in this material world, no matter how much good things you will do to the people, they will always be unhappy about it. Everyone, you may be very good father. What you will get at the end? Your sons will be spitting if you are like it. If you are not like it, they will be fighting. I mean, not necessarily, but ultimately that's happening. We're trying to do better and better and better for others, and others are never satisfied with this. And this is, we have to understand that this is Krishna is telling us, you are not the best friend of everyone. Stop trying to satisfy everyone. You cannot satisfy everyone. No way, no chance. You might try very hard to satisfy everyone. You will not be able to do this. You will be frustrated. People will turn away, they will become your enemies. Those very people to whom you did the most, they become your enemies. Believe it or not, I'm speaking from my own experience. Trying to do something. But because the motivation is wrong. Ultimately, this is our way to be in the center of people's life. While trying to do something good for people, they are doing the same old story. They are trying to become God in this world. They're trying to say, yeah, I'm the best, just worship me, and they're doing it in a very crooked way. Those who are just trying to enjoy that, this is tamasic motivation, just to enjoy. Rajasic motivation is, I am the powerful controller of everything. And sattvic motivation, I am the best friend. Nobody is better than me. That's wrong. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. And ultimately this world is there to frustrate us in all these attempts to become good. And sometimes people don't understand what is bhakti. Because bhakti is very difficult to understand. Bhakti means very deep motivation within our heart, which ultimately forces or makes everything which we do is for the sake of the Lord, not for ourselves. And sometimes people don't see it. People, this kind of charity work, which is being described in this work, is understandable. And people don't, for ordinary people don't understand what's wrong with it. What is bad about it? He's a nice man, isn't it? But motivation is it. Sometimes those people, and therefore for people it's very difficult to understand what is Bhakti. Bhakti is a state of heart when you only want to do something for the Lord, not for yourselves. There is a very beautiful story about this in the life of Srila Prabhupada. In San Francisco it happened. One young lady, she was a hippie lady. And hippie, hippie, they are very idealistic people. They try to find love and happiness, and they want to do something good. So she wanted to find out the guru from India. And she heard that there is some Swamiji, he is living somewhere high Kashmir over there, or what is the name, whatever. So she came to see Prabhupada. She asked if I can see the Swamiji, and devotee said, yes, you can see the Swamiji, go upstairs, he's sitting there. And at this moment of time, Srila Prabhupada was sitting with Gardamuni, and he was going through the books. You spend 10 cents on this. Is it right? And, Prabhupada was going through cents and, dollars and, how much it is. And when this lady hippie came, she said, I want to see Swami. Srila Prabhupada said, and for a long time he goes through the books and asking, what is this expense, why you spend so much, and, and they counting and counting. And she's becoming more and more disturbed. What kind of guru it is? What kind of guru it is? He's just, counting money. And ultimately it's totally contrary of her ideas of, guru and love. Like sometimes people who want to gain more followers, they just really imitate the real good guru. What is good guru? Somebody who's always smiling. So, Prabhupada is very serious and he's counting all the cents which are there, trying to save something. And ultimately she became so frustrated, she just got up, she raised her hands in the air and she started yelling, I came here to find love and peace. And Prabhupada very calmly looked at her and said, sit down, you came to the right place. Figure out what's going on. Is this the way to find love and peace? But yes, ultimately the point is that when we are in the darkness of ignorance, we can do many different things, but we will not become happy. And we will be disturbed and we will be fearful, and there is only one way of becoming happy, which we all want. There is only one way to achieve all the purposes in life, is to remember Him and never forget Him. And that's basically the essence of the teachings which is there in Srimad Bhagavatam. And we have to remember Him always, all the time, and therefore we are doing what we are doing, just to remember about the Lord, who is the Lord. And then this human form of life is very valuable because it gives us a chance to remember about the Lord. And that's why we're coming here to Vrindavan, because Vrindavan is a special place. It's a place where remembrance of the Lord becomes very easy and natural. Everything here is supposed to remind us about the Lord, who is the best friend of ours. Before finishing, I wanted to also quote one verse from, I believe, next to 30th chapter of Srimad, the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is actually very beautiful. Savai priyatamas chatmaya donamaya manvati iti veda savai vidvam yovidvam saburu hari. It's a very beautiful verse. It's actually the verse, one of the last instructions of Narada Muni to King Prachinabhai. When the whole allegorical story about King Puranjana is over, Narada Muni, to make sure, when he explained everything, what is the different elements of this allegory, to make sure that that the point which he wants to make is understood, he gives very direct instructions to King Puranjana. And this is one of the very valuable and direct instructions to King, not to King Puranjana, to King Prachinabhai, which is, practically the advice of Narada Muni to King Prachinabhai. He says that Savai priyatamas cha atma yatona bhayam anvati. When the living entity understands this simple fact, Savai priyatamas cha atma, that the Lord is priyatama, is the most dear to the living entity. When we understand this fact that the Lord, who is always with us, who is within our heart, and He is the object of our love, He is the most dear, He is our supreme, He is the well-wisher of everyone. When we understand this, yato nabhayam anbhati, such a person who understands that the well-wisher is always with us and He is the most dear to us and He will never leave us, such a person, because of this understanding, one will not feel even the slightest trace of fear. The one who understands, who realizes this fact, he will be totally fearless. And iti veda savai vidvan. The one who knows this, he is the vidvan. He is the one who has real knowledge. Iti veda savai vidvan. Yo vidvan saburu hari. And such a vidvan, such a knowledgeable person, he is guru. And he is the external manifestation of God Himself. It's a very beautiful criteria for us to understand who is guru. Guru is the one who doesn't have any fear, who is fearless. And we all know that the name of Srila Prabhupada is Abhay Charanaravinda. He is the fearless guru of the whole world. And and this is the real knowledge. Sometimes people have different misconceptions of what the real knowledge is. But according to Narada Muni, who wants to drive the point of this story to the heart of King Puranjana, the only one can teach you, and the only one bona fide representative of the Lord is there, who is not fearful of anything. And if you look at the life of Srila Prabhupada, he has proven it again and again and again. Any one of you And you're probably, most of you probably much younger than Srila Prabhupada when he went to America. Is anyone of you would be ready to go to America with 40 rupees in your pocket? Just make this experiment in your mind. Not knowing anyone. It means that Prabhupada is not seeking protection or security, money, material possessions, and everything. His only security, his only protection is the Supreme Lord, who is always with him, and who is the best friend of everyone. So he showed this, that this is the ultimate state of spiritual realization which we all have to achieve. And for that we have to accept Guru who fits the bill, being good, who really realize this knowledge, who is knowledge. Once I was giving a lecture and I was explaining about this, how the fear that the fear appears in the heart because of the absorption of material world and the objects of material world. And I became very excited about this whole philosophy. And then there was some balloon, and balloon blew up. Hare Krishna. It's easy to say. It's easy to explain this, but ultimately, if we do want to leave this material world and not to be born again and again and again here, we have to achieve this state of complete fearlessness through the realization of the Supreme Lord as the best Supreme well-wisher, and enjoy, and not to try to compete with him in the way of our enjoyment. And he is the Supreme Controller of everyone. Thank you very much.
Srila Prabhupada was saying that when he got the letter from Bhakti Saraswati before his passing away in this world in Jagannath Puri, this letter came from Jagannath Puri to Srila Prabhupada. Bhakti Saraswati wrote that when Prabhupada was asking, what can I do for you? Because all of your sannyasi disciples are serving you, but I'm in Kasa, staying away from the movement. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati wrote to Srila Prabhupada that you should, I'm just confirming that you should preach, and it will do good for you, and it will do good for others. So how can we keep going in our preaching and at the same time not to fall in this trap of being the Supreme Sarvabhutana, being the friend of everyone and ultimately get frustrated?
Even if you don't keep this point, Krishna will make sure that you will understand this. Even if sometimes in your mind you imagine yourself as the best friend of all living entities, Krishna very soon will, detecting your weakness, will show you that forget it. Yes, this illusion is there, and it's a nice illusion, one can say. It's a sattvic illusion, but still it's an illusion. And yes, we have to be well-wishers of everyone, but ultimately we should not be in the illusion that everyone will appreciate us. And Goswami gave the advice, which is universal advice, applicable to everyone. We all know his advice. And out of these four things, being more humble than the grass, being more tolerant than the tree, and ready to give respect to everyone. The fourth rule, not expect respect from anyone, is the most difficult to do. Humble you can be, or at least you can pretend. That's not what we all expect. Tolerant is a little more difficult, but ultimately we can also do something like this. And give respect to others. Yeah, we can learn how to do this, but not expecting respect from anyone. That's too much. It's already too much to ask. What do you mean? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this to get some little respect. I don't need much, I need little. Anyway, so ultimately, we have to work. It's a work. It's a service. We always have to come back to the point that I'm serving, and the source of my satisfaction is the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. And if I'm trying by some mistake to become happy or satisfied independently, that's a mistake. That ultimately reinforces or strengthens the darkness of ignorance which is there.
As you know that there are four states of consciousness like Sapna, Jagrata, Sushupti and Turiya. So when living entity or anyone, someone is seriously injured and someone is put in coma, then who wakes them up, means who gives them remembrance? Is this Sukarsal or?
Ultimately, yes. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that from me the remembrance and forgetfulness is coming. Living entity is not very powerful, despite of the misconceptions which are quite prominent. So we can't do much ourselves. Sometimes, we really feel that I'm in control of my life. Krishna says, I'm really sorry, but you yourself cannot even remember it. Yourself, if I would not give you memory, you will be totally covered by this ignorance. You will not even know, you will not, Sometimes people in their old age, they can't remember anything. It's probably those people who felt that, I got myself together. That I can remember everything I need. It's super soul in the heart. It is also said that the super soul is in our heart reminds us of the unfulfilled desires with which we died. At the moment of death, the living entity always feels that I didn't fulfill this, and this desire of mine was not satisfied. And then, of course, this drastic thing happens. We are dragged out of the body. Then, we spend a few millenniums in hell. And then, ultimately, we are born again as a human being, very happy, healthy child. moment of time, the Super Soul within our heart will say, you remember this was your desire. Try it. It may work this time. Yes, it's Super Soul. And if we, that's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that the spiritual samskaras will never be lost, because ultimately you will be reminded by the Super Soul you did something. It will never be covered completely, so you will start your spiritual journey at the moment where you finish your spiritual journey before. So that's what it is. Last question.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for inspiring class. You mentioned that the number one desire is the desire to enjoy, especially sex, which of course is confirmed in the very first chapter, first text of Adidas. So going a little deeper, if it is not the gross sex desire, the subtle desire of Abhijna Pratishtha. So my question is, how can we detect in our own heart and the people around us that we are free from Abhijna Pratishtha?
How can we detect in our own heart that we are free from love of Vijnana? Yeah, for that, there is a very strong mechanism of self-deception within our mind. Because of this ignorance which is there from the time immemorial, we always think about ourselves better than we really are. And Krishna actually very mercifully keeps us in this ignorance. Because if we would understand the extent of our fallen condition, we probably would never be able to do anything. In this state of lamentation all the time. So Krishna does not, he's not in a hurry to destroy all our illusions. Destroy our illusions gradually, like a good doctor. First you get cured from this, and then you will get cured from this. And then I will show you something really special within your heart. So ultimately, there's two things. If you're asking how to recognize these things, one advice would be just keep on chanting Hare Krishna mantra and you will recognize. In the beginning, we all think, I'm almost there. I'm almost, Prahlada Maharaj likes to tell the story about his first letter to Srila Prabhupada. He says, my first letter to Srila Prabhupada, dear Srila Prabhupada, please explain to me, what will happen when somebody is going from the stage of bhava to the stage of prema. And Srila Prabhupada's answer was, don't worry about this. And by the way, where is your $50 which is making good? But anyway, so one advice is just keep on chanting Hare Krishna mantra. You will ultimately understand what is going on with your heart. Krishna will mercifully show you. And another advice is, of course, to study very carefully scriptures, Shastras. Because in the Shastras, everything is there, and especially if you study not on your own, but under the guidance of someone who's more knowledgeable and more realized than you, and then you will ultimately develop the discrimination, the Viveka. Viveka Shakti is a special Shakti of our mind which can be developed. And this power of discrimination, the best way to overwhelmed with power of discrimination is to study Shastra. Because all the symptoms are there in the Shastras, and ultimately you will see Shastra is like a mirror. And if you study carefully, you will understand what this mirror is telling you.